Hello and welcome to the People's Lawyer channel. Today's installment is part 5A of Dark Legal Deceptions in our series of installments based on the live in-person talk Disclosure 2022 and update. Right, fraud, more fraud. The government's true status and your legal fiction person status. All fraudulent may be too strong a word, but deceptions is a better word. They're just deceptions. This is how they get to control you. The government status, well, we have the Federal Reserve Act 1913 in the US and the Withdrawal of Gold Standard Act 1933 in the UK. That's when trouble really started, when they paved the way to withdraw gold and silver, precious metal, as collateral for government debts. Governments were then bankrupted. And the bank said, well, it's all right, if you go corporate, go off the land onto the seas of commerce, we shall back you all the way so you can carry on with your genocidal agendas. That's the kind of conversation that they have behind the scenes. It's all right, you can make your wars, make people think that they can get sick from somebody else and offer them the pharmaceutical solution. So in other words, you can carry on with your lies and pantomime, but we need collateral. What have you got? Because we've taken the gold and silver off you. So you can see the trick. We take the gold and silver off you and we ask you for more collateral. And the collateral was us. Our birth bonds. They create value from our births because we are energy. We're God's gift to the planet. So we have to have an inherent value. And that's going to be all the energy input, our fees, taxes, licenses, all the things that we pay into the system. That's what they're gambling on. We have an inherent value, our birth weight in gold, hence the phrase worth their weight in gold. So that we have an equivalence. So if you're born 7 pounds 8 ounces, they assign a birth value to you of that same weight in gold. And then they add to it according to how your life is being led. So that led to incorporation of the United States, and the screen says here, can you spot the difference? Well, the top one is the United, small t, small u, States of America, date of incorporation or date of creation via Constitution, 1796. That was the glorious Republic. So the glorious United States of America, the Republic, was on the land, populated by people, governed by representatives, genuinely for the people, by the people, etc. And then the United States was incorporated in Washington, D.C., which has got nothing to do with the United States of America. It's a corporation that has officers. So the President of the United States is just the CEO of the corporation known as the, capital T, United States, capital U, capital S. And America doesn't feature in that corporate identity. Similar thing happened to the United Kingdom. We became United Kingdom, or UK PLC, operating on the seas of commerce, collateralized by its inhabitants from birth using bonds. So government is now corporate, and corporate contains the word corpse, which we know is dead. What does it mean to be running a dead entity? What does being corporate actually mean? From our point of view as living men, women, boys and girls. Let's have a look. In 1942, the United States Supreme Court issued a judgment and summarized the position of corporate governance at law as follows. And it became the Clearfield doctrine because the name of the case was Clearfield versus Texas. 1942 US Supreme Court. And the judgment included this following explanation of what it means to be corporate. Quote, when private commercial paper is used by corporate government, government loses its sovereignty status and becomes no different than a mere private corporation. As such, government then becomes bound by the rules and laws that govern private corporations. In other words, the laws of the sea or laws of contracting commerce. So if they're using headed notepaper, which has a date of incorporation and a logo in commerce, then they are basically offering you a contract because that's all they can do under the Clearfield doctrine. If they intend to compel an individual to some specific performance, equity came along to correct the inadequacies of common law. Equity has non-monetary remedy. If you go for an injunction against someone that's harassing you, that's equity. You just want them to stop harassing you. That's equity. Equity is about justice and fairness. It's not fair for someone to harass you, to trespass all over you, to breach your peace of mind. And we'll look at breaching our peace or our peace of mind later on, as opposed to breach of the peace. So if the government want to modify your behaviour or punish what it sees as wrongful behaviour, it needs a contract with you, and it can enforce that contract, if it does have a contract with you, via an order for specific performance, which means you contracted to do what we wanted you to do, but you didn't do it. And now we're going to take you to court and force you to do it, or punish you for maintaining that position that you're not going to do it. So if they intend to compel an individual to some specific performance based upon its corporate statutes or corporation rules that they refer to as law or laws, again using deception, then the government, like any private corporation, must prove itself to be the holder in due course of a contract or commercial agreement between it and the one upon whom demands for specific performance are made. In other words, they must have a contract with you. So what they say in the vernacular is, we created a law, you broke the law, and now we're coming for you. And we're going to penalise you, fine you, imprison you for breaking the law. That's not what is happening. What is actually happening is, we got you to enter into contract, you broke the contract, and now we want equitable remedy, technically known as relief, a remedy in equity, forcing you to do what the law says that you should do or should have done, or to be punished for not doing it. That's equity. It's not law. It's contract. Laws of commerce, rules of commerce. You're in contract, you broke the contract, and now there are consequences. If a corporate government is an entity in commerce, therefore we can conclude and infer that we cannot be governed and policed unless we consent or are in contract. That's the Clearfield doctrine. So you may have an agent in your face saying, it's the law. And you can just say, well, actually, I beg to differ. You're a corporate agent, and I know about the Clearfield doctrine. They never told you about the Clearfield doctrine. You go home like a good little boy or girl, look up the Clearfield doctrine. You need my consent. Now, that's going to be traumatic if you've never stood up for yourself before, but you have to do it. You will be doing it sooner or later, I can promise you. Because they're coming. They may be coming for you or for your kids, but they're coming. And we need to celebrate that, because when they come, we can give them a lesson in law, can't we? So we're not going to be frightened of them coming. We want them to come. That's the whole point, and we want to show them that we're not frightened. And then they'll think twice before coming, because they're narcissists. They only come because they think they can scare us. Once we show, so certainly in sufficient number, that we ain't playing those scary games, and we can laugh and smile at them. Oh dear, you don't seem to have your paperwork in order. Oh dear me. Got no contract. Clearfield doctrine. Then you'll need my consent. Well, as you can see, not consenting. So, on your bike. One woman recently had a knock at the door from an enforcement agent, and she shouted from a window, she was savvy enough not to open the door. We don't open doors, folks. An open door is an invitation for an agent to enter without being a trespasser. And you can change your mind once you realise who it is, but it gets a bit fraught, and then it gets a bit kind of conflictive and stressful. She shouted through this window, "Excuse me, but you're wasting your time. I'm a living woman." And the agent scarpered. Once she put him on notice that she knew who she was, and therefore he needed a contract or consent, then he knew he was wasting his time. That's how it works. That's what some of us have been doing for several years. Some of us even longer than that. So welcome to World War III. It's fun once you know what you're doing. I can guarantee you it's fun. It's scary at first. Don't go away thinking that I haven't felt the fear and done it anyway. Of course. But I knew that I had to feel the fear and do it so that I could then, a few years later, tell everyone to expect a bit of fear, but do it anyway. And particularly if you know what you're doing. If you know that you are the law and they are trying to pretend that they are the law or are standing on it. They are nothing. There's a judicial precedent from Cruden versus Neal as far back as 1796. Every man is independent of all law. So this was something that the judge in the case uttered. Every man is independent of all laws, so man meaning mankind, obviously, except those prescribed by nature. He or she is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow man without his consent. So we've known this for a long time, but you won't find this on any law course. There's someone whose daughter is studying law at the moment, and it said on the course, you become a person from birth. Well, we're going to undo that in a minute. No, you become a boy or a girl from birth. You become a boy or a girl from birth. That's all you can become. There's no other status that's offered. Except on a law course, when they tell you that you can become a person. We'll undo that in a minute. More examples of the difference between their so-called law, which are statutes or legislation, and real law, because it's referenced in their own legislation. Coronation Oath Act 1688 refers to statutes, law, and customs. Therefore, we can deduce that statutes, which are now called legislation or legislative rules, and law are not one and the same thing. It's recognised in their wording. So if they're there to uphold the law, if they're on oath or affirmation or attestation, then you can point out that they're not there to uphold statutes or legislations. If they say that they're to uphold the law, it's the law of the land, the law for the people, coming from a higher source, which is the only law that we're bound by. Got nothing to do with Parliament and rules. They're just your servant's agent. So the status of the government is a service corporation. They have the same rank as McDonald's, Tesco, Sainsbury's. If you had a visit from a Sainsbury's agent saying you need to come in twice a week to spend at least 100 quid, that's like a form of taxation, isn't it? You just laugh, wouldn't you? Well, the government have got the same status. And yet for some reason it's because we went to the government schooling department, didn't we? Ironically, now Sainsbury's and Tesco's and all these other companies and the banks are now taking over schools. So it will be even more of a fusion of corporation and government, which, was it Mussolini? I think it was Mussolini referred to as true fascism. When statism, corporate capitalism bond and fuse together, then you've got true fascism. The Act of Settlement 1700 defines law as our birthright. If it's your birthright, it can't be anything to do with Parliament. We've been born on the planet for thousands of years. How old is Parliament? It's got nothing to do with us. We created it. Whatever I create, I own. We own Parliament. They're our servants. Bill of Rights 1688. Parliament assembled can do nothing to the prejudice of the people. Written into their legislation. So if you think that the legislation is getting more and more tyrannical, it's time to stand up. And I do have a remedy for that, which we'll look at towards the end. Time to stand up and plonk our remedy on their desk. Corporate government does not make law, it makes policy. Again, that's the other thing to take away from today. If you're taking three things away, this is one of the three. Corporate government does not make law, it makes policy. Viruses do not cause disease, disease causes viruses. That's the other thing. There is a third one coming along. When we get there, I'll tell you what the third one is. Corporate government does not make law, it makes policy. And now we've got the Bank of International Settlements, and we've got central banks and World Economic Forum, Council of Foreign Relations, Club of Rome, Rockefellers, Chatham House, etc., etc. They're the policy makers. And then you've got the policy distributors. This infographic is courtesy of Ian Davis of UK Columns, so I need to credit him for that, in case he ever watches this and goes, oh, I wrote that. Thank you very much, Ian. Your government is just a policy enforcer. That's why you're wasting your time even speaking to your government. Why would you tell them that their policies are bad when it's not their policy? That's why Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng went to visit their policy makers to be told that they needed to change tack. They're the children. Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng are the little boys and girls, the little naughty children that have not quite got it right. They have to go to mummy and daddy higher up to be told, no, try again, folks, do it again. So they're not making law and they're not even making policy. So the banking elite hold the strings for the corporations, and the corporations have the politicians as their puppets. So that's kind of a simplified version of how it works. And we notice there's no room for us on there. We don't feature on that because we're not stakeholders. This is stakeholder capitalism. Two reasons why you don't have a say. One is you're registered to vote, and B, you're not a stakeholder capitalist. So you've got no chance. But once we take on board the Clearfield doctrine, we realise that there's therefore no such thing as legal obligation. No such thing. There can't be, because we're not dealing with law, we're dealing with policy. No such thing as legal obligation. No such thing as legal mandate. Let's take the word mandate apart. Mandate from Black's Law Dictionary, 11th edition, Roman and Civil Law, a written command given by a principal to an agent. That means you're already in relationship with your mandator. So if you don't have a relationship with the government, where's the mandate? Doctors could be mandated because they're in a relationship with the NHS. The NHS could be mandated because they're in a corporate relationship with the government. We don't have a mandate. So it's a commission or contract by which one person, the mandator, requests. Even if you are in a relationship, it's only a request. Someone, the mandatory, to perform some service gratuitously. So it's a bit like saying, we know you're under contract to us, but we want you to go, please, pretty please, we want you to go above and beyond your contractual obligation. Do us a favour. Oh, all right then. And if you say, yes, I'll do you a favour, then you become mandated to perform some service gratuitously. The commission becoming effective when the mandated or mandatory agrees. So it is only mandatory if you agree to it. Mandates are not laws. Laws are not laws. Obligations are not obligations unless you created them without being coerced. They're tricking you all the time. So that's the government deception. That's the end of part 5A. Stay tuned for part 5B of Dark Legal Deceptions.